Yes, good morning, everyone. I want to start a bit light. After a 45-minute in-depth story, I want to start with a question. Who here in the audience has ever gone bungee jumping? Don't be shy. We only have 3 bungee jumpers here. Well, it makes sense because it's not a very sensible thing to do, I guess. But let's just say that bungee jumping was something that was always on my list of things that I thought I should do before I die. And I don't even know exactly why. But somehow it felt like an experience that I needed to have at some point. So here I was walking through Spain in my early 20s on a sunny day, of course, because it was Spain. And I happened to walk across this tower that you could jump off of for only 25 euros. And bungee jumping, of course, by the way, not just jumping off the tower. But I thought, I'm on my list, 25 euros. 1 plus 1 equals 2. I bought myself a ticket and I entered the queue. And I was also quite surprised there was actually a queue, but I guess more people had it on their list or they just enjoyed it. I'm still not sure. But after a bit of wait, it was my turn. So I came up front. They put the elastics around my ankles and they put me in this bucket. Together with this guy who works there, and we started going up slowly, way too slowly, because I had a lot of time to overthink what I was actually about to do. And halfway up, it sort of struck me that whenever we get there and this gate opens up here, I am going to do many things, but jumping is not one of them. So I turn to the guy behind me and I tell him, look, no matter what you're going to say, no matter how good of an elevator pitch, so to speak, you might have prepared here, I'm not going to jump out of this bucket. So when we get there, please just push me and give me no choice. And he was like, yeah, all right. He was weirdly okay with it. I guess he gets the request a few times a day. So, but anyway, when we get there, the gate opens up, the tension builds, and before I know it, I have the elbow in my back, and I have no other choice than to embrace the open air. And I checked the item off my list. Now, why do I start with this story? That's mostly to do with the fact that for me, bungee jumping has a striking similarity with giving a keynote speech. It was also one of those things I thought I'd always do at some point in my life. And 2 months ago, when I got handed the opportunity to stand here today in front of all of you to share my story, I thought to myself, it's not even on my list. It doesn't even cost 25 euros. Let's do it. So I signed up for it, and now here I am. All jokes aside, I am honored to be here at the first edition of the Connect conference, and I will be talking about my company, Boltcom, the Boltcom platform as well, and how we scale that platform through, you already guessed it, our API. First, a little bit about me. So this right here is my beautiful family. Mine is divorced, so that's not mine. But this is my wife Alexandra, my 1.5-year-old boy Matteo. We live a pretty standard Dutch life. We live in Utrecht City, walking distance to the city center, biking to the headquarters of Boltcom, so I bike to work as well. So all in all, it's a pretty relaxed life we live. My wife and I also share 2 big hobbies, rock climbing and snowboarding, both of which are kind of on hold thanks to this little dude over here. But as soon as he reaches the age that he can partake, we're going to support those hobbies onto him as well. We're going to do it as a family. So then Boltcom, the company I've been working for 7 years now. And I think most of you will know Boltcom. Just to be sure, is there anyone here who's never heard of it until today? There's some people, that's okay. No need to be ashamed. We're not going to send you out of the room or anything like that. But it's good to see that almost everyone here does, because we are the biggest retailer in the Netherlands and Belgium, online retailer, I should say. And something that's a little bit less well known about us is that we are actually a platform. So a lot of the products that you buy at Boltcom are not actually sold by us, but by one of our many retailing partners. So, history about Boltcom, just to set the stage a bit. Boltcom started in 1999 as an online bookstore, the first online bookstore in the Netherlands, and pretty soon grew out to also sell CDs, DVDs, electronics, and in a matter of a few years became more of an online warehouse. And that was a perfect breeding ground to open up what we call bol.com Plaza in 2007. And that was a place where anyone could offer second-hand products on our, that would be sold through our web shop then. That was basically the conception of our platform, and that was such a success that we decided in 2011 to open up also to other companies to sell new items on our platform. And we didn't look back ever since. So we call ourselves a retail tech platform right now, and the idea is that we as bol.com are just one of the many retailers on our platform. So we have 13 million active customers in the Netherlands and Belgium. And even if not everyone is an active customer, we have about 90% of brand awareness, meaning that 90% of people at least have heard of our brand. We sell 35 million distinct products in our web shop, and those products are sold by us and 48,000 other retailers. Now, interesting thing about those 48,000 other retailers is they actually are responsible for 60% of the things that we sell. And this clearly shows how important the platform is to bol.com. Now, of those 60% retailer sales, 86% of those retailers use our API. So clearly our API is also very important for the platform. Let's zoom in a little bit on the API. We very recently released version 9, and as of version 9, we have 105 outward-facing endpoints. Those endpoints are basically collecting data from 31 internal teams, and those endpoints, they are good for 1.4 billion requests per week, which if you average it out is a little bit over 2,000 per second. And we have 20,000 retailers using our API. And one thing that's really important for those 20,000 retailers is predictability, because they build their business on top of our API, so they need it to be predictable. And the way we try to achieve that is by having 2 fixed moments in which we release in a year. So it's in October and in April. That's why we just had a release. Typically have 3 API versions that we have in parallel, and that is because we offer 20 months support on anything that we release. So we make sure it's backwards compatible and that can keep using it for that time period. Then for our retailers who don't mind getting a little bit experimental, we also have preview and beta tracks on our API, and through those tracks we can release more often than just twice a year. All right, some other thing that's really important for a bol.com platform besides our API is what we refer to as our ecosystem. And in order to understand what our ecosystem is, imagine the following. We have 48,000 retailers who all have their own business. So that's a lot of very different businesses, and therefore a very broad range of different needs for certain tooling and services in order to grow their businesses. And we have to ask ourselves how we are going to fill in all of these needs fast and effectively. And the answer is we don't. Instead, we focus on our API, and we let all these needs basically be answered by other companies who are more than willing to build tooling on top of our API that our retailers can then use. And this is actually a collaboration that we really very much embrace, because it's really a win-win-win situation. Our retailers get to choose the tooling that works well for them. And whatever is good for our retailers on our platform is of course also good for us as a platform. And we have an enormous added benefit that we don't have to keep up with all these very different needs that all these retailers have. By doing this, we also create business opportunities for all these ecosystem partners that we have to identify market gaps and act on them, and that way build their pockets. So everyone's happy here. Then I talked a bit about bol.com platform, our API, our ecosystem, but as many of you will know, in order to build, maintain, run a successful API, a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes, and it's no different for bol.com. And in fact, about a year ago, we really found ourselves at a crossroads. And I don't mean like a simple Y intersection, you either go left or right type of deal, but I'm really talking about like a highway system with flyovers, traffic coming from all directions. You need to set a destination and take exit after exit, taking into account all the traffic to get there. But that was okay because we recognized this, we acknowledged it, and over the last year we actually spent a lot of time with a lot of people to really think about the direction that we want to head and which decisions we have to take in order to get there. And what I want to do here today is actually take you through some of the most important learnings that we've had over that year, starting with what we refer to as our channel mix. Well, in order to understand what I mean by our channel mix, I'll have to tell you what we mean at Voltcom with a channel. And simply put, a channel is an interface between us and our retailers. And we have two such channels at the moment. We have Retailer API and the Retailer Dashboard. And the Retailer Dashboard is basically just a graphical user interface. And the goal of both of these channels is the same. They both enable our retailers to manage their shop on our platform. Now, both these channels, they were conceived in different parts of Voltcom, also at different times, and they've seen their own evolution throughout the years. But the key point is that the evolution was pretty much independent of one another. So these channels are basically independent, with a few dedicated teams working on one channel, a few dedicated teams working on the other channel. And therefore, we never really considered the mix of these channels. So should we give more priority to one over the other or not? And when we started looking at some numbers, we actually realized that we should. For example, these numbers, on the left you see that we have that 40% of our retailers use our API, but that 40% of retailers is actually responsible for 86% of the retailer sales. So these numbers very clearly indicate that as soon as retailers become more serious on our platform, become bigger, they really are very likely going to use our API. And this has led us to prioritize way more on our API development and make our retailer dashboard more of a secondary channel. So the other one might maybe ring a bell with you. We want to eat our own dog food more than we do right now. And before I go into what it means and what it means for us exactly, let me first take you along a little bit in a high-level picture of our channel architecture. So we have our retailer API and our retailer dashboard. And as I said, they're pretty much set up to be independent of each other internally. So what they both do is they go to Voltcom microservices, they get the data that they need, they aggregate it in the way that they want, and then they apply business logic the way they think it should be done. And this comes with some struggles, of course, because first of all, the autonomy that these channels have right now of each other is really killing the consistency. Because as you can imagine, they both do their own aggregations and they both apply business logic that might not always be in sync between the channels. So depending on the channel, you might return slightly different things to our retailers. And that's not okay. This setup also does not stimulate what we call feature parity. So what I mean by feature parity is that if we offer a feature to our retailers through the retailer dashboard, we don't necessarily offer that feature also through the retailer API because we are not set up that way. They're autonomous units. One is that retailers are our main API testers, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It has led us to a good API because they do give us a lot of feedback and we do improve. But as you might remember, whenever we release something, we have to support it for 20 months. So it would be nice if we can get some serious feedback before we actually release it. And besides that, we really rely on our retailers as well to find out about all the pain points. And I can imagine there are a lot of pain points that are just not annoying enough, easy enough to work around, that we never even get to hear about them. So there's a really elegant solution to make these struggles disappear like snow before the sun, as we would say in Dutch. And it is so elegant, in fact, that it requires only one arrow change in this diagram. Now, I can assure you there's a lot more arrow changes in real life, but over here, it's really just taking away the arrow from the retailer dashboard into the Voltcom microservices, and connect the retailer dashboard straight to the retailer API. Now, if you take a look at the struggles that we had, you'll see that they will no longer exist, because the consistency issue is gone, because the retailer API now dictates how the aggregations are done, which business logic is added. Retailer dashboard just uses that. It's also gone, because imagine that you're working in a team in the retailer dashboard and you want to add a feature to the retailer dashboard. But before, you could just go to the multiple microservices to collect the data and build your feature and expose it. But your process now would be to actually see if the data you're going to need for your feature is already in the retailer API. And if it's not, you will open up a collaboration with retailer API to see how you can bring the value of that feature to all of the channels. Lastly, we will have now our own internal IT teams who are working on the retailer dashboard using our API as well, thereby having much shorter feedback cycles on our API development. And there is a official phrase for this elegant solution. Already guessed it. It's eating our own dog food. Now, who here already knows that phrase? Knows what it means? Okay, that's quite a lot of people. That's what I expect. Who here knows why that phrase even exists, or where it came from? That's a lot as people, that's what I thought as well. I also didn't know, so I did some digging. And I found two possible explanations for the phrase. The first one is that there once was a CEO of a pet food company who back in the 80s made a TV commercial in which he explicitly stated that their dog food is so good that he even feeds it to his own dogs. Like, that's really special. Now, the second explanation I found, and that was a bit more extreme, is that same CEO used to take a can of dog food to shareholder meetings, and then in front of all the other shareholders would open it up, put it on a plate, get a fork, and actually eat it himself, just to prove how good the dog food is. I really found this explanation online. I didn't make it up. It doesn't matter which of the two it was. This phrase, eating your own dog food, really made it into official IT jargon, and it really just means use your own services. In our case, our own retailer API. Because if you use your own services, the quality of those services will be better. Because if the quality is suboptimal, you will be the one suffering it from it, and no longer just your end users. Third learning is about scaling up our API team. I think that's actually quite well done with what Andrew just told us as well about platform teams. But we have a bit different terminology for it, and probably also a little bit of a different definition. But as I said before, we have about 31 internal teams that all expose their data to our retailers through our retailer API. We have, however, only one centralized API team who are responsible for getting the data from all the other teams and then transforming that into what our retailers know as a retailer API. And this comes with a lot of responsibilities for our team. For example, they have to do the API governance. They have to make sure that all those 105 endpoints that we now expose, that they together make sense. They also have to have a very deep knowledge on our internal technical landscape, because for every data field that comes back from any of these 31 internal teams, and we're talking about thousands of data fields, that they have to know exactly what these fields mean, what data type can be, what the possible values are, boundary conditions, etc. And on top of all of that, whenever there are production issues that affect our retailers, it's always up to this team to take a lead role in fixing this and chasing any of the 31 teams that are involved with the issues. And even though this has worked pretty well for us for years, because it did bring us to the API that we have now, we are reaching a size now where this just no longer scales, and this slows down API innovation. So we had a look at some of the options of how we can scale this API team. And one of them, with this API team, is to just add a few team members. But of course, as with any team, if you want to be considered a team, then every team member has to know from every other team member, approximately at least, what they're doing. So for a certain team size, that also doesn't work. So this doesn't really scale the way we want it to. The alternative would be we take a team, we take this team and we just split it and we say this subset of endpoints is going to team A and the rest is going to team B. The problem with that though is that there is still a lot of overlap in what both of these teams will need. Just to give an example, we will need some API gateway that both of these teams will need. And so, of course, we could just say, well, the gateway goes to team A and they maintain it for themselves at team B. But then what happens when we scale a bit further and we make this into 4 teams or even more? At some point, because of course the gateway is not the only common thing that these teams need, we're going to create a lot of dependencies between these teams, and some of these teams are not going to have enough time to actually add business value because they'll be too busy managing the stuff of the other teams. So what we did instead is an approach that we actually took about a year ago also for our retailer dashboard, and it works really well there. And it is, we take our API team and we transform it into, as Andrew said, I think a platform team. At WorldCom we call it the foundation team, but it's essentially the same idea, I think. And for us, the sole mission of the foundation team is that they enable the feature teams, the orange teams around them, to deliver as much business value as possible to our retailers with the minimal fuss. So an easy way to see that for our case is that the feature teams, they should be able to really focus on the endpoints, on the what. What do we want to expose to our retailers? And the foundation team should really focus on how can these feature teams do that. So if we then take a look at the initial responsibilities that we identified for this team, we see that API governance will still have to be done by the foundation team because you just can't get around the fact that you will need a single entity to still overlook the entirety of all your endpoints, make sure they all fit well together. But that's okay because this deep knowledge that they needed on the whole internal technical landscape, that's going to be gone because that's the whole purpose of the setup, that the feature teams can actually take ownership of the data part. And when we're looking at production issues, because the actual data, the endpoints will be owned at the feature team level, we will see that the production issues will also become much more of a joint effort between the foundation team and these feature teams. So then, after we had these insights, you might be wondering, okay, what is now actually, where is it where you heading now as a company? Yeah, it's a good question. We did ask ourselves, what is our destination? Our destination, we hope, of course, is a scalable API, scalable future for our API. So what I want to do here last is share with you our architectural destination, on which we believe that will truly bring us a scalable API. And the architecture starts with an API gateway, the component that receives all the API traffic. And because all of the feature teams will basically need this, it makes a lot of sense that the foundation team owns that. Then based on all the learnings that we had so far, we decided to introduce a new architectural component into our landscape. And we refer to those as channel APIs. And you could look at a channel API as just a subset of the retailer API. And that would mean that if you take all the channel APIs together, what you end up with is, in fact, the retailer API. But the main difference with the current retailer API is that the channel APIs are owned by feature teams. And because of that, it becomes a feature team responsibility to go to those multiple microservices, aggregate the data, apply business logic, etc. And the foundation team no longer has to worry about that. Now, of course, in order to maintain the consistency that we currently have in our API, because splitting up something and dividing those teams always comes with the risk of dropping consistency, in order to prevent that as much as we can, there is still control of the foundation team in every single channel API, and we do it in the form of a code library. But there, basically, things are arranged. For example, authentication, rate limiting, monitoring, logging, error handling. Topics like these just make a lot of sense to be controlled by a central team, our foundation team. This is not beneficial just for our foundation team. It's also very beneficial for the feature teams because they don't actually have to worry about those things. They can just start building a channel API, and all they have to worry about is the endpoints that they're going to build and how these bring value to our retailers. Now, it's already a titled channel API, but the idea of a channel API is that it's an API component for all of our channels. So not just for the retailer API, but we can also just plug in our retailer dashboard on top of these channel APIs. And we will have two consistent channels, plus we'll be getting our own document. So, brings me to the final slide. And I want to basically just turn to you and ask you to ask yourselves about your API destination, and if any of these learnings help you or change that destination, perhaps. But I just want to leave you with the following points, just repeating them. To really consider your channel mix, because for example, for us, we need way more focus on our API than we had. I would definitely encourage you to each other talk to it, even if it's just to be able to use the phrase. And as soon as you have a few teams working on something similar, like an API, it really pays off to invest in a proper foundation. And we did that in the form of a foundation team, but you could do it in many ways. You can have a few people that come together a few times a week, as long as it's a topic of discussion. I think that's the most important here. And that's my story. So we can go to a little open Q&A. There's already got questions there. Well, the top vote is one vote, so I'll start with that. If you had a magic wand, what's the main API challenge of WalletCon you would want to address today? And assuming you do not have one, how to address it? Well, the magic wand would basically just give me the architecture I just showed today, and not have to do all the work to get there over the coming few years. But without a magic wand, I would say that one of the main struggles we see is that our internal API guidelines are just way less strict than our external ones. So I would say it's an organizational challenge. So improving our internal APIs to be more aligned with the external conventions that we set would help a lot with building our retailer API. I hope that answers it sufficiently. Then the one below, 3 votes, how to prioritize requests internal versus external. If you don't implement features for dashboards, they'll do it themselves. But the feature might not be a priority to external.
I didn't have enough characters to like.
That's okay. Would you like to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, what I've seen in other you start this great idea where the one channel goes through your API, and then that API is also used by other people. But then if you then don't focus on their feature requests, which are very important to them, but not important to anyone else, they'll then start to go back to the old ways and be like, this takes too long. And you as an API team suddenly have to focus on feature requests that aren't involved.
True, there will always be a challenge of changing the mindset of people. So all we can do is prescribe the rules that we have, and basically explain why we have those rules. There will always be opportunities to cheat for teams, but as a foundation team and the people involved in that, I see this as a main task to really evangelize what we're trying to do, what we do, and to encourage everyone to join. And there can be exceptions, but I would say you want to minimize those, and if they are there, I think you still want to encourage the teams who make exceptions to sit at a table with you to actually discuss why this exception was made, so that you can learn from it and try to improve. But it's a good point. Definitely a challenge. The next one, how do you make your technology as suppliers' choices? Well, there's a lot of different technologies involved, and at Volcom we have quite a lot of autonomy in teams, so it also differs per team what technologies we're talking about. If you remember that the big highway crossroad that we had, one of the exits that we need to take there, one of the big decisions we have to make is also what third-party tooling we're going to use for API development on a company level. So there's a clear need for collaboration tooling, for example, and there are a lot of ongoing discussions for that. And the way how we make it is just by getting the relevant people together often enough to drive to a decision there. And generally speaking, we work with what we call architectural decision records for topics like these, because these are hard decisions. We actually document the process of how we got to certain decisions, so they can always be seen later on why these decisions were made. I hope that sufficiently answers that question. And now the next one, is Volcom using an iPaaS system? If so, which one? There's a lot of systems that we use in Volcom, but I'm not sure about an iPaaS system, to be honest. We do build on the Google Cloud, but I'm a bit hazy on the definition of an iPaaS system, as you might notice. So, if anyone wants to clarify that question, give me a short explanation, please do.
Well, you have tools like COM or ESO2,
Right.
API platform,
Yeah. So those are the collaborative tools that I spoke about before. We're very much looking into it, to what it can bring us. So far, like I said, our API development started at some point and then sort of naturally evolved within our company by our IT teams. Therefore, everything right now is custom made. But of course, we're also aware of all the great systems out there that we could use, but we did not reach an answer yet. We're looking into it actively. And why would you not let your retailer dashboard go through the gateway, but directly to the channel APIs? That's a good observation. That is something that we indeed also considered. And it is something that we might do in the future, connecting the retailer dashboard directly on the retailer API. But what we're doing now will effectively give the same advantages, plus that it's not as far from our current architecture as going straight through the retailer API, because we have to do a whole lot of rebuilding internal libraries for authentication, etc. If we would all of a sudden start using the retailer API like our other retailers are. So it's a smaller step for us with the same advantages if we start by going to the channel APIs now. And we have in mind that we can always make the switch to go directly to the retailer API later on.
So you're only eating a little bit of your dog food.
Well, as long as the channel APIs expose exactly the same as what our retailer API exposes, we still fully eat our own dog food. But we do have to keep in mind that the retailer API then doesn't add some extra magic sauce so that it's actually different what retailers see. The idea is that the channel APIs are exactly what also the retailers have. Yeah. Next one. We still have quite some questions. How do you respond to change with 2 fixed release dates per year? How do you see it working with the adaptability part that the previous speaker talked about? Well, actually, we've even had requests from quite a lot of our integration partners to have less release dates per year, because they need to update a lot of things that for them that didn't really bring anything. But I would say the retailers that do want more functionality more often, they can often do so thanks to our preview and beta tracks of our API. So we do constantly innovate and experiment and bring that value to either an open group for anyone who's interested. Sometimes we also have closed betas with retailers who are interested in joining us for an experiment, for example. Right. Next question, which decision from the past do you regret most, and how did this advise the route forward? This decision do I regret the most? It is a good question. So many things I regret. Well, the thing is, I started like a year ago when we found ourselves at a crossroads. I started basically to really look at the issues that I saw and how to move forward from those. Sorry. So I think from that point it only really got better. So I don't really see any big regrets at the moment regarding this API. That is not yet. That's going to get in a year. Next question: How do we manage 2,000 requests per second in terms of architecture, security, and data backups? Well, at the moment, we're still serving our retail API from our own data centers, and the machines there can be as beefy as we want, and 2,000 requests per second there is not an issue. We are moving it to the cloud as we speak, the Google Cloud. So we will be ready to scale up more flexibly, etc. Security, there is at the moment in data center we just work. We vision our infrastructure team that sets a lot of this security. In the cloud, we'll be using native cloud technology for that, like Google Cloud Arbor to deal with a lot of stuff and DDoS protection. Data backups are, generally speaking, luckily for the API, not really a topic of much discussion because we don't own that much data. We are really mostly focusing on being an API and connecting other teams that own data. Right, next question then. What's your strategy for APIification when architecture is hybrid? Mix of legacy and cloud applications. Applicable for internal and external systems. So I'm wondering if this question is about how we deal with our internal microservices being hybrid, as in some of them being old, built on technology, some of them being new, some of them being in the cloud, some of them not being in the cloud. Is that the scope of the question? Because if it is, then the way we deal with it is that, luckily, a long time ago, we already decided that all the services basically work together through REST APIs. So our microservices landscape is pretty much independent of the technology that microservices are built on. So for our API application, that is not really a concern for us. And when it comes to the cloud versus not cloud, we have a Istio mesh set up, so it's even completely transparent. It basically doesn't matter where a service lives, as long as you know its URL, you can get to it. So then we get to not a question but a comment. I am a big fan of eating your own dog food, but I prefer to describe it as drinking your own champagne. Oh, that's a good one. Does that also have a reference to a Wikipedia page? Maybe we should create one. Come up with a story.
Final question.
Okay, well, this is the final question. What is your technology stack? Front-end, back-end, mobile? Well, our back-end stack, it does differ a bit because we build a team Autonomy, but the mainstream go-to technology, especially in the API area in our company, is Spring Boot. And basically for the application, we have on the front end mostly Angular, some React as well. We have our own internal front-end component library with Volcom house style. We have foundation to that against that as well. And regarding mobile, I'm not sure. That's completely on the other side of the company. I do know that they are built onto a GraphQL API. And that is something that we are considering also to enable in our space. So everything so far was REST APIs and Volcom so far. But there are some experiments with GraphQL and it is getting some traction. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to change. Of course, there are hundreds more, but let me know if you're interested in any more particular details. And I think that holds in general for the rest of the day. If you have any more questions or discussions, I'd be happy to have them. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the day to speak to all of you here. And well, I'd say have a great day today.